Discussions with a Nobody podcast. As I record this, it is Tuesday, March the 17th, 2026. I hope you are doing well wherever you are and you're having a good St. Paddy's Day, however you are celebrating. Happy St. Paddy's Day. Just want to remind everyone you can follow along with the show at all times on Twitter at DWAN Pod, Discussions with the Nobody on Facebook. Get us on all podcast platforms, on our YouTube channel as well at DWAN Pod on YouTube. And you can follow me at Big Jim Sports on socials as well. I was going to record this a couple of days ago. I was going to record this last night. I ended up getting a partial episode of the Earnestly Speaking podcast in, but Mother Nature had other plans for me on Monday in the form of severe storms and a power outage. So I am getting to this today on Tuesday, and I appreciate you all listening in and hope you are doing well. Aside from the stormy and now cold weather in central Pennsylvania, we are in spring. We are in the month of March, and over the past couple of weeks, we have finally started to come out of what has been a really harsh winter in the Northeast, and I gotta say that it really has been fantastic. I've been able to play golf one time, been able to get out and exercise a bit outside, do some things outside, not feel like I have to bundle up like I'm going on the planet Hoth at any point outside anymore. And it's just, it kind of like almost makes me feel human again to just go out and be a kind of normal human being in warmer temperatures. In some cases, like the warm temperatures were in the 40s even with the breeze. It felt warmer than it's been. And I'm starting to feel like myself. And this winter has been extremely difficult weather-wise in Pennsylvania. I felt like once it got cold in December, January, it just stayed cold until March, which was difficult in and of itself. But then, I've shared at times on this show a bit of my weight loss journey, my exercising, my eating better. And this year was particularly difficult because around Thanksgiving, I had a bout of sciatica, which kind of laid me up for a couple of weeks. End of December, then I had, for the first time in my life, gout in my left foot. Not an enjoyable experience. 0 out of 10. Would not recommend if you have the choice. So on top of the really crappy weather, I didn't have really an opportunity to exercise, to go out and, foot hit the pavement and all of that. So it became, that was an extra frustration in and of itself, and was kind of made it difficult for me. But even a winter like this, I like regularly, I'm like, why do I live in a place where the air hurts my face? Why do I live in a place where it is so cold? But really, this year was kind of an atypical winter. This was not normal. Kind of a historically cold winter and cold periods and cold stretches. Like every year we get cold stretches that last a couple of days and then it warms back up. It didn't feel like it broke for about a month and a half. But despite all of this, I don't think that I will ever leave like where I live. It's my home. It's everything I know and I'm comfortable with. It's where my friends are. It's where my family currently is, with the exception of my brother. And it's the place that feels normal and comfortable for me. So I don't envision changing that and leaving this. Another thing that has made this winter and recently kind of difficult, not just from a physical health standpoint, but a mental health standpoint, is this isn't a video show, but I'm just broadly gesturing at the world, right? Everything that is kind of going on right now, between the rising cost of things, the conflict in the Middle East, the current occupant of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, the political party that I was once registered to, and the downfall of that party, the collapse of that party into manic cult behavior, just everything. I mean, when 2026 began, when we turned the corner on 2025, I know there was jokes, there was memes, there was people talk. Is this year going to be better? And I guess it had a chance, and in a way, I suppose it still does. We're 2.5 months in. The early reports do not look great. The early prospects do not seem good for 2026. The dumpster fire has now gotten wheels and an engine and is moving downhill. So my mental health has not been tremendous either because of all of this. And trying to find the balance. Of, okay, you gotta, I guess you don't have to, but for me, I have to know what's going on to a degree. So trying to find the balance between staying informed and not overwhelming myself, not getting lost in a doom scroll, not becoming kind of possessed by it, or maybe possessed is the right word, overwhelmed and taking in too much information, because there's a fine line between properly informed and just kind of overwhelming yourself. And because, look, we need to maintain our mental health. And I'm struggling. I'm sure many of you are struggling. So in the midst of all of this, if we don't have our mental health, then they're winning, right? The chaos and those causing the chaos are winning. So if I'm no expert, please never confuse me for an expert on any of this. But if I can make some advice from the almost 19 years of therapy that I've gone to, it's find the balance. And if that means set screen limits on certain social media apps, do it. I've done it. I still have them to this day. I set them in November of 2024. You can figure out the reason why. And I've had them since then on certain apps on my phone. Getting outside, literally taking a 5-minute walk, literally standing outside on your back porch on a warm, sunny day and just breathing in the fresh air and feeling the sunlight on your skin. Going for a drive with the windows down, going to McDonald's and getting a Shamrock Shake, going to Dunkin' and getting an iced coffee, going to Sheetz or Wawa or whatever convenience store that you frequent to pick up an extra treat, stopping off for an ice cream cone, something that it brings you joy, grounds you. That's something that I think we all need to do. Some days you need it more than others. Reach out to your friends. Reach out to your family. You don't have to post about it on social media. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. You don't have to let everybody know that you are struggling. But my advice is find at the very least a couple of people in your life that you trust with the closest, the internal things, the things that matter most to you, that mean most to you, that understand you, and that'll be there not to tell you how you have to do it, not to tell you you have to feel better or anything like that, because you don't. That's kind of the sad reality right now, is you don't have to feel better. I think that we have to make sure we're not feeling terrible all the time, and we have to be able to find joy in a song, a movie, a friend, a partner, a spouse, a TV show, something. To find pockets of joy, I think, is very important. But you don't have to brush it off and say, oh, I have to feel better. Because the world's heavy, man. The world's super heavy right now. It is super heavy. And, you know, I've seen friends, acquaintances, celebrities say, I don't do politics. I don't do politics. I don't have a thought on that. I don't do politics. Which to a degree, I understand. However, the problem right now that I have with, quote, I don't do politics, or I avoid politics, is politics is not avoiding you. Politics doesn't not understand you. Okay, you can't hide from politics, especially now. Ever, but especially now. Do you go to the grocery store? Do you put gas in your car? You know, do you pay taxes? Do you vote? Because if you do any or all of those things and more, politics is politicking at you. So I suppose you can continue to not do politics, but you can do that at your own peril. It's been 6 years since the COVID pandemic. And it resonated with me. Last week I had a particularly rough week, and took the week off of all podcasting. The 3CT, 3 Count Thursday, the wrestling podcast I do, the Take 3 wrestling podcast that I do. I was going to record this last week. I was going to record something for the Huddle Up podcast last week. And just had a rough start to the week, was in a bad mental place, and opted not to. And so, as I normally do for 3CT right now, because, long story short, we had to switch podcast servers, if we take a week off, I will schedule shows out of our archives. And the show I picked for last Thursday, March the 12th, was the episode from 6 years ago that day, March the 12th, 2020. And it was basically at this cresting point of when the world started shutting down because of the pandemic. And I listened back to about the 90-minute episode of 3 Count Thursday, and it was me and my co-hosts Ryan and Matt. And Matt was on a call from his home. Ryan and I were in the studio here. And it was wild to listen to that episode. And if you want to go over and listen to it, you can. It's on the 3 Count Thursday podcast and YouTube channels. But to listen back to that episode and remember what that was like, because I think the sports leagues had started shutting down. There was independent wrestling shows in Central PA that were vowing to continue that weekend. I think the ones that had vowed to continue did shutting down and not having their shows. But just talking about our thoughts and our feelings at that time, and kind of still having a kind of jovial and possible positive outlook on what, a 2-week shutdown or a 30-day shutdown might end up being. And it got me thinking just about back to that time, and look, I don't ever want that level of fear again. I don't want that level of anxiety again. I don't want a novel disease to rip through the global society and kill millions of people in a short period of time. I don't want that. But man, to think about those weeks and months following and slowing down, staying at home. I missed seeing friends and family and doing a lot of things that I loved, but slowing down and spending more time at home and watching movies and talking to people on the phone and, having my senior dog by my side for, about 14 months before we lost him. It was really a wild time, and I'll never wish for anything like that to happen again. There's sometimes I'm like, man, I wouldn't trade those 14 months I had with my dog and the time I spent with my wife and finding different ways to appreciate friendships and family relationships. Was wild. I don't ever want to be unemployed for a year and a half again. That was not great. But it was just it was a fascinating thing to listen to and to think about. So again, if you want to, you can head over there on 3 Count Thursday on YouTube and on the 3CT podcast channel. And man, it's wild if you think back to and how I have lately, late 2019 and the beginning of 2020. And I saw a meme today that I shared, I think, on my Instagram page, that it said, if March 2019 me and March 2026 me sat in a room, they wouldn't believe each other. And man, that resonates so much. And I've seen people post about this as well, about how like 2019 feels like it was the last normal year of our lives, because we didn't know it was coming. And I don't know that anything will ever be quote unquote normal again. I don't see how we erase and forget and move on from what has happened in 2020 and since then. And kind of in a weird way that stinks. That stinks. And I don't know if it's just the world that is going on around us, or partially because of thinking about the year 2020 and kind of repeating the year, not repeating the year 2020, but reminiscing about that year, because the dates are falling on the same. It was, Thursday the 12th, 2020 was the day before everything shut down on March 13th. And that weekend, like this weekend that we just got through, was the weekend where really everything started to shut down and stop. But I've gotten into music a lot more lately. I've also been very busy at my job. So like a lot of times I would listen to podcasts, but now with being as busy as we are, I struggle to, I can't listen to podcasts and do my work as well. So I find myself listening to more music, just very lightly in the background. Sometimes like, regular music band, like I've gotten back into, some bands I haven't listened to in a while. Dave Matthews Band, Mumford and Sons, The Killers, Green Day. Some of those you can probably apply to, again, gestures broadly at the world. But it's been really nice to kind of revisit music that I hadn't listened to in a while. But also because I don't want to get distracted in my work, I have begun listening to a lot more like instrumental music. So like lo-fi and different like just musical calming musical like instrumentals and beats to kind of just have in the background while I work. There's tremendous pages on YouTube. That's where I listen to the most of my music for it. I listen to like the instrumental music, and in other instances that like the soundtrack from Stranger Things, but music from Stranger Things. I listen to like instrumental like Disney music, like guitar covers of Disney songs or piano covers of Disney songs. But I've really kind of fell back in love with music. Has that happened to anybody else? Like, have you, and feel free to, again, hit us up on social media, discuss with nobody on Facebook at DWAN Pod on Twitter. Does that ever happen? Have you ever like fallen out of love of music or listened to less music and kind of rediscovered it? Again, but speaking of discovering, and this isn't definitely not a rediscovery, but transitioning out of music into things that I watch, I've dipped my toes into the horror genre. So in the aftermath, and if you haven't listened to the Stranger Things discussion that I had with Matt and Ryan, discussion 37 here on the feed, check that out if you've watched and enjoyed Stranger Things. Would love to hear your thoughts on that. But in the absence of that, once the show was over, I needed something to kind of like scratch the nostalgic itch, and I wanted something else to watch. I wanted something similar, and a friend of mine said, try Welcome to Derry. It's on HBO Max. It's in the It universe. It's kind of the Pennywise origin story. And if you know me, I am not a horror fan. I am not a scary movie fan. I'm not a spooky movie fan. TV show, like it's not my wheelhouse. It's never been. But she goes, look, the first episode might be hard to get through, but once you get through that, you'll be okay. And I'm glad she gave me that warning. A friend of mine who in Mackenzie, thank you for sharing that, both the show and that information, because I would have stopped the show. First off, I would have never watched the show if not for the recommendation. And I also would have stopped the show about 3 or 4 times in episode 1 because there was like kind of scary and weird and freaky stuff that happened in that episode that I just would have been full stop. I'm out. I'm not moving on with this. But at her advice, I stuck to it and I kept going. And I was even though I was hesitant to start episode 2, there was an episode, I think it was like episode 4 or 5. There's a scene that almost made me stop it as well. but I pressed on. I actually finished the show the end of last week, and it was so good, and I'm so glad that I pushed through and watched that. And then my friend Mackenzie, she recommended that I watch It Chapter 1 because it kind of picks up where Welcome to Derry left off. And I'll be fully transparent. I started the movie, and then I had a friend of mine over the weekend ask if I wanted to go out to our local diner. I did that, so I stopped the movie. I think it was about 25 minutes in or so. But I am going to get back and revisit that. But look, I'm not going to ever be a full-fledged horror movie fan. But if you have any recommendations for shows or movies that are just really well done and really well produced, that are in that same vein as Welcome to Derry, please let me know. Please let me know. I'd love to possibly look into them as well. Speaking of watching things and the HBO Max, it was a journey for me to even be able to watch this because, boy, do I have some thoughts on streaming services and my issues with streaming services right now. Because I had to go a roundabout way to be able to get access to HBO Max. Now, my cell phone plan that I am on is a family plan through AT&T. We've had it for a very long time. It is actually through my brother's email address because he's a former employee of AT&T. When HBO Max, and I think it was just Max at the time, had a streaming partnership deal with AT&T. So AT&T customers got HBO Max for free. That is a grandfathered play, and it's no longer offered. However, they have begun, like every other freaking streaming service, they've begun cracking down on password sharing and being people outside of your household, and this, that, and the other. Well, again, this is a family shared cell phone plan. We all pay the same amount per device, but because it is in my brother's, under the main account is under my brother in Florida, I can't access the HBO Max that I should have access to. We've had to get we've had to pay for a secondary account for my mother to use our Netflix. I've had to purchase ESPN and Disney Plus on my own because ESPN and Disney and Hulu started cracking down on the outside of the household accounts, users. It's ESPN, the WWE, which I am a huge wrestling fan. The WWE now streams their pay-per-views on ESPN Unlimited, not ESPN Plus, ESPN Unlimited, $30 a month. Now, when this was announced last fall, it said everybody who gets ESPN channels through their cable or TV system, which I do. I'm a YouTube TV customer. Not a happy one, but a YouTube TV customer nonetheless. They will have access to ESPN Unlimited. Spoiler alert, I still don't have access to ESPN Unlimited, so I have to use a friend's account until probably that gets shut down because... thanks, ESPN. You apparently don't have enough money from people, and you are not rich enough. ESPN and YouTube TV need to get their shit together. But it just, the whole thing, it just feels like they're stacking the deck and intentionally screwing people out of our money and our services, and they're constantly changing and constantly merging, and eventually the dam's going to break, right? Because streaming, both streaming services, Netflix, Hulu, things like that, and streaming TV providers, YouTube TV, Sling TV, those ones. They were the alternative to cable, right? Like they were the cheaper alternative. Come and get just the content that you want, and not all the rest of that filler that you never see. Well, now everybody's merging and sharing and buying each other out and grouping these deals together, that you can get a ESPN bundle with HBO, but you can also get a Paramount and something. It is so beyond frustrating and annoying, to the point where it's like, do I just go back to Xfinity cable? Like, I got rid of DirecTV and cable years ago. But now I debate going back because it feels like less of a headache. Lastly, I've shared with you my journey of going through Disney content, and I've been on kind of a roll lately. Been going through watching a lot of Disney stuff. In the last few months, these are things I've watched either for the first time or the first time in a very long time. Lady and the Tramp, Zootopia 2, saw that in theaters. I think it is now on the streaming service on ESPN Plus. Soul, Sword in the Stone, the new Muppet Show, the special, the 50th anniversary or whatever special on Disney Plus. Brave, Emperor's New Groove, Dumbo, Mulan, The Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, the newer Winnie the Pooh. Watched The Good Dinosaur actually this evening. Before I recorded here, we did also see Hoppers, the new Disney Pixar movies in the theater. Look, if you're a fan of Disney Pixar stuff, I will highly recommend that you go check out Hoppers, either in theaters or once it hits Disney Plus. And really, I'm loving the journey. I'm starting to mark off a lot of things. Now, I will say, in Dumbo, Lady and the Tramp, there were certainly moments in those movies, because of the time that they were released, that do not age well to 2026. But what I'm happy that Disney has done is they have not removed them. They have not changed the original content. And they kind of have a disclaimer that says, this came out when society was different, and it creates the ability to kind of, if it's with your kids and with anybody, talk about the things that are portrayed in those movies that are not acceptable today. And why society was different then. So I'm sure there's going to be some things in some other movies as I make my way through some of the old classics that do not age well. But it's been fun. I enjoy old and new, some more than others. But there has not been a Disney movie that I have watched yet that I have disliked. So that is where I'm going to wrap it up for this one. I hope you have enjoyed all or at least some of the episode. Please, again, follow us on all of our social media at DWAN Pod on Twitter and on YouTube. You can also get us on Facebook, Discussions with a Nobody. You can also get me at Big Jim Sports on social media. So if you enjoyed the show, please share it with at least one person. Encourage them to do the same. And until next time, I hope that you have a great day and you're doing well.